Slavic beauty secrets versus the American mass marketing of cosmetic products. Today we're going to discuss whether a woman's beauty really depends on how much money she spends on her self-care, or if this can be completely ignored, because there are so many cosmetics out there that you could try everything, spend all your money, and still never find something that actually works. What specific tricks are used in marketing, and how? Marketing companies in America prey on women's lack of education when it comes to beauty, because Slavic secrets to success are to some extent about discipline and to some extent about understanding what is happening with your face, for example, or your body. It's like when you drive a car and you know your brake pads are worn out. You don't guess what's wrong or despair that your car will never run properly again. You just drive and replace the part, but you know exactly what broke and you know exactly how to fix it. For example, here's a simple example. Recently, about a year and a half ago, a cosmetologist in America told me, "Oh, you should try photo rejuvenation." He said, "Do photo rejuvenation. You'll love it. Everyone loves it. It's great for everyone." I just started reading about what photo rejuvenation actually does, what main facial issues it addresses, and I realized that I wouldn't see any results on my own face. The only thing that would happen is I just spent $2,500 for the minimum course, and that's it. But nothing at all would happen to my face because I don't have those kinds of issues. I had a different kind of problem that I wanted to solve at that time. And in 90% of cases, this is absolutely just a waste of your money, because you'll simply be offered services, hardware treatments, cosmetic products just because they're available. And simply because you have requests, because you have potential money to spend, to buy these products, and basically as long as it doesn't harm you, it will be sold to you. But your goal isn't just to avoid harm. Your goal is to address specific problems on your face, right? I've gathered 3 key marketing myths and I want to go through them with you. Here in my notes, myth number 1, money solves everything. Now, I'm definitely not the kind of person who will tell you to buy cheap cosmetics because they're effective and everything else is just marketing. No, sometimes cheap cosmetics are effective, but they're only cheap and effective because they contain just one main active ingredient. But in order to solve certain structural skin problems that cause the aging process, as a rule, there is no such thing as a single magical ingredient, because your skin starts to deteriorate on all fronts, and that's why you gradually begin to age. Just like me, to be honest. And when you have 9, 10, or even 12 products that you need to apply to your skin one after another, and you try to save money when buying them, first of all, these products simply don't penetrate deeply enough. Cheap products really have poor delivery systems. Any rejuvenating effects occur in the deepest layer of the dermis, and for those effects to come to the surface so you can actually see them, it takes about 6 months. So it turns out that the delivery method is crucial. Cheap products usually create some kind of wow effect on the surface layer of the skin, but that has nothing to do with actual rejuvenation or correcting systemic issues. The structure of your skin usually doesn't respond at all. It might give some effect while you're using it, but nothing beyond that. But it also works the other way around. I've seen creams that cost $500 with absolutely useless empty formulas. But unlike most people, I know how to read ingredient lists. I'm not too lazy to do it. And I've seen pure marketing, just basic, simple child-level moisturizer with anti-age written on the box for $500. That too. So it turns out that effectiveness is likely to be linked to some average price, but it's actually less about the price, since there are billions of these products, and more about what's listed in the ingredients and what the main component is. And today we'll go over that together as well. Next, the second myth, which is also very common, is using a cream that gives results in 2 weeks. That's the best cream. And this is a very important downside that women who truly want to rejuvenate their face often don't understand. Look, what is the aging process? The aging process is a change at the roots. So the outer layer of the skin, imagine it's like the leaves of a tree. The problem isn't in the leaves, the problem is in the roots of that tree. The roots of this tree they're like computer code. How correct it is determines how the deeper layers of the skin are formed. Any products that give you any kind of instant effect in the first 2 weeks are simply pleasant bonuses. I'm not saying that such creams are bad, they're nice. Usually a good cream that works on the deeper layers of the skin, or a good serum, also has pleasant effects like evening out the lipid layer, because that creates that velvety feel to the skin, which you enjoy. Because this part, honestly, that's just marketing. If you use something and don't see results within the next 2 or 3 weeks, you simply won't buy the next jar. But in the grand scheme of things, the fact that your skin looks more hydrated or smoother for a moment when you use this cream doesn't actually do anything for you. You keep aging just as you did before. So what happens if a woman isn't educated about cosmetics? She buys cheap marketing-driven products that create quick effects on the surface layer of the skin, but in no way slow down the aging process. And she continues to age relentlessly. And she gets hooked on creams, without which she can't look good, because they only provide these superficial effects. These are, for example, effects from caffeine, when the face gets tightened, looks more even, and becomes rosier. But you keep aging just as before under this effect, and at some point it will stop working for you. And the creams that, for example, cosmetologists recommend to you, telling you to buy, say, professional ones, not all of them, I'm not saying all, but there are different kinds. And sometimes the recommendations are completely empty. These are products that are supposed to work over the long term. You use one jar, then you use a second jar, and you're like, but there's no effect. 3 months have passed, and usually after 3 months, you should see something. Yes, in the first month, you definitely won't see anything, especially if it's peptide cosmetics or retinol. The positive effect will only become noticeable after 6 or 7 months, but what you will notice right away is that you'll start peeling after 2 weeks of using it, that you'll see immediately usually. That's why, in this case, peptides are better than retinol. But the point is that women fall into a kind of trap. If something doesn't work quickly and doesn't produce an immediate effect, women usually don't buy it. What gives a quick effect? She keeps buying, but in the long run, it doesn't actually help her avoid aging. And here you have a marketing hook that drains women's money and does absolutely nothing to help them look younger. And it forces them to accept that their only options are either harsh hardware procedures or, when they're older, a facelift with not very good results of the skin, which won't really help much. Now, the next myth, beauty is only about appearance. Everything depends on lucky genes and external factors. Actually, that's not true. In American culture, people often say, accept yourself, be natural, you don't need to change anything about yourself, just embrace who you are. In Slavic countries, to this day, there is insane competition among women. Just absolutely crazy competition among women. Yes, someone, say, an American woman might say that this isn't about freedom. But since I am Slavic by nature, I simply can't imagine my life any other way. In other words, I can't accept myself, no matter how much I try to convince myself, if I don't like the way I look. For Slavic women, the idea isn't so much about pleasing others or even pleasing men, but rather about maintaining a very high standard of discipline when it comes to self-care. You simply can't allow yourself not to touch up your grown-out roots, for example, if the color is noticeably different. Or you definitely wouldn't walk down the street with gray hair just because you're busy running a business and didn't have enough time. Yes, I run a business too. But it's not so much about natural beauty. It's more about the matter of self-care. Or, well, not being lazy, for example, about doing all this routine beauty care. Because in reality, it does work, and it actually takes quite a bit of time. When I was 22 or 23, my neighbor, who was a cosmetologist, this was in Russia, she would look at me and say, "You're so naive right now just because you're 23. First of all, she would literally take me and say, "These split ends, that's not attractive. Your hair never looks well groomed. Your ends should always be taken care of. Do you use a hair mask?" I said no. She said, "So what do you use?" Pantene shampoo, I guess. And the same conditioner. She said, "That's not going to work. You have to use a hair mask." And when I looked at her, I said, "You spend 40 minutes in the bathroom in the morning and 20 minutes in the evening. And on top of that, you do some masks and other things too." She said, "Yeah. How else did you expect it to be? If you don't do all this, by the time you're 35 or 40, you'll already have irreversible changes on your face, skin, and hair. That's all there is to it." And that's why it's more like, well, a lot of people think that it's, do Slavs have some special genetics? No, it's not genetics. When it comes to body shape and skin quality, it also matters a lot that fast food wasn't developed in Slavic countries the way it was in America. That is, there's a culture of cooking at home, a culture of eating more homemade foods. And for now, better quality products. There's just more of that there. And sweets among Slavic peoples are usually reserved for holidays. You can't just eat desserts. It's just the culture doesn't allow for eating desserts like 3 times a day. That's not okay. I mean, people would just give you weird looks. Well, it's not normal. I mean, I grew up with the idea that you could have cake on the weekend or on a holiday. The rest of the time, we ate things like meat, a side dish, and vegetables. Now, about sports and different types of sports. Honestly, I can't say that 2 or 3 generations ago in the former Soviet countries, women looked athletic and fit. On the contrary, they didn't. Usually, Slavic women handled a huge number of problems on their own and took care of things. In other words, they did a lot of physical work, so women were usually stocky and quite strong. But lately, this healthy lifestyle crowd really promoted among people my age and a bit younger, the idea that you should have some kind of sport in your life, not necessarily doing it professionally, but just having some suitable sport as a regular part of your routine. And if before it was like you had to do sports seriously with a coach or something like that, now that extreme approach is no longer the case. And now everyone understands that if you choose a certain type of sport, gymnastics or fitness for yourself, you can do it in a rather superficial but consistent way, for example, 2 to 3 times a week for 30 to 40 minutes. And that will be enough to have a pretty toned body. So there really is no need to be a bodybuilder or to do some sport professionally. And most Slavic women have understood this. And most women, especially those who are overweight, even simple things in the gym are hard to do, so it seems to them that they won't even be able to manage it because it must require a lot of professional effort. Some people choose to go for 20 to 30-minute runs at a pace of 7 to 8 minutes per kilometer. That's actually very slow. You're crawling, it's like grandma's pace, like a snail. But if you do this 2, 3, or 4 times a week, 3 or 4 is better, that will be enough for it to count as the necessary exercise for you. Or for example, many women just do myofascial release or some stretching exercises. You can also Google it, and I have an explanation about it on my channel. It's not physically difficult, but it really helps to tone the whole body. You can just go to the gym and do strength exercises, but strength training is aimed at increasing muscle mass. But most women want to lose more weight, have more definition, and look slimmer. That's why choosing the gym is usually not the most effective option. Swimming. Please, it's not such an intense physical activity, and it's not so unpleasant that it's unbearable. Or, for example, some light fitness exercises that you can just do yourself. Yoga is very popular because it works on muscle definition and body slimness. And if you also watch your diet, then there you go. But you don't need to do everything. You don't need to try to stretch yourself too thin. You need to do 3 workouts a week and choose what suits you best. It could be running, it could be swimming, it could be yoga. A basic set of exercises. Don't try to be a professional yogi. You don't need to try to be the best of the best. That's not the goal. Just start doing simple basic actions. My mission on this channel is to help women who have a personal desire for themselves, who simply look at themselves in the mirror or feel their bodies and want to look better. Not for someone else, but first and foremost for themselves, not to please anyone, not to get approval, but to enjoy themselves. I had this desire myself a few years ago, and for most of my life, up until I was 30, I wasn't satisfied with either my appearance, my figure, or even my health. And at some point I realized that it was taking up so much of my attention that I really couldn't be in a good mood all the time because of it. No matter how much I tried to fool myself or accept myself, I still felt self-conscious about something. I still noticed that some women were more attractive or interesting than me, and I wanted to feel comfortable with myself. Not so much to compete, but just to feel comfortable. You know, like there are A-list actors, it's like you want to be among the best. You don't have to be the very best, but you want to be among the best. You don't want to be at the very bottom. Well, probably because life is a kind of game and there's always some sort of competition in it. Of course, maybe many people won't agree with me now and will say that it's not like that here, that in America we have a different culture, we're about freedom, about self-acceptance and so on. But sorry girls, I couldn't explain it to myself. I want to look in a way that I like myself, and as a result, I feel confident around other people. So that I feel comfortable in life, at work, with my husband, among other women, men, and so on and so forth. So that I simply don't have to focus on the idea that something might be wrong with me, in my own opinion. So if you share this approach and feel that you would like to feel as confident as possible with yourself and to be as satisfied with yourself as possible, subscribe to my channel and watch the videos here. There are videos about cosmetics that rejuvenate and tighten facial skin, videos about minimal physical exercises that actually give the greatest results, videos about nutrition where I talk about how I lose weight, what the pros and cons are, and how to preserve your hair and hormones in the process, because usually diets are always associated with some major downsides, and much more. And please write in the comments the things you would like to improve about yourself. And if it's not too much trouble, write in more detail, because this will help me create content that suits you better. Subscribe to my channel and give it a like. Thank you for being with me today.